I believe we'll be live any second, Eric. I'm just checking on my phone, and here I believe we are.
Says it is. Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Here we go. Lovely. Eric Lochtefeld, thank you very much for popping in on a Friday morning over here, and I believe in California at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. Correct. Thanks for having me.
Where are you at the moment? You just at home?
Yeah, just like everybody else pretty much in California and most of America, I am working from home and have been since the middle or end of March.
Tell me, someone's trying to get in here. No. Just to give the people watching a bit of background, I met Eric, I believe, was it February or January last year?
Yep.
And I got in touch with Eric. I wanted a mentor that I wanted a mentor who was there. I wanted someone who could show me the path. And for me, it was about really stepping into my bliss. I'd kind of found my groove, but I was missing tools and a mentor that was many steps ahead of me. So I've found this behemoth of a man. And then we ended up in Lake Como in August, in one of my finest experiences of my life, to be fair.
Thank you.
And you help people, one, unlock their bliss, their purpose, and then follow it. Can you explain that? How do you unlock your purpose?
Yeah, first I'll say that who you are is exactly my demographic. I look for successful business owners who are really questioning, gosh, I'm successful, but there's something missing. And they can't always put their finger on it, right? I've got success, I've got love, I've got this, I've got that, but no real joy, right? So that's my target. And I love to travel through the world and tap people on the shoulder, because often they don't know what they're missing. They don't even know something is missing, right? So
are they on the edge of an awareness? There's an awareness.
I think they are. Yeah, I think they are. They know that something's missing. They just don't know how to fill it. So what a person typically does is fill it with more success, right? Or more of everything.
Yes.
And then it still is elusive. So ultimately in Lake Como, what we got to do together is, number one, the first start of the process is that if anybody ever tries to tell you they don't have a purpose, they're incorrect. The purpose is lying dormant in most people, and it's been there for decades. What they don't have is words for it. So it's really sitting there in their subconscious or in their emotions, right? But every time I help someone unlock their purpose and I ask them, hey, how long have you been at this? And I'm not asking how long has it been a business, like literally, how long have you been at this thing that we just discovered as your purpose? I've never had a person not answer decades. Well, one, but she was only 18 years old. So she said 10 years. Everyone has answered decade, right? So everybody has a purpose. What they don't have are words for it. So what they tell every entrepreneur when you're starting a business is, hey, have an elevator pitch in case you run into a venture capitalist in an elevator and you got 30 seconds to tell them what you do. Well, your purpose is actually why you're on this planet. What's most important to you, what brings you alive, right? So there's a way of getting at that and unlocking it. And the key is to give it words. And what I like to do with somebody is unlock it, but then help them upgrade it, right? So let me give you an example of what upgrading your purpose looks like. So my purpose going back into my 20s, I've always known it. It's to be inspired, right? So that, if that sounds selfish, because yeah, that's for me. That's where true purpose starts, is for you. But then when I contribute that, which is to inspire others, that's my gift. So there's perfect alignment versus what I need for myself and what I want to contribute to the world. But what I found out 4 years ago is, yeah, but why? Why have you been after inspiration for so darn long? Why has it been there for decades? And that's where we got into the why coaching that we did with you in Lake Como, and I do with my customers today and all the members that we work with, is number two is why. So my why is that I wanted to transform. So you can substitute a lot of different words for transformation, but I want to transform. I want inspiration to transform me. But then I had to go, yeah, but to where? Where am I trying to go to? Right? In the end. And ultimately I decided, and what I found at the age of, I'm now 49, guys, I was 46, what I was missing was joy. So I want to be transformed in the direction of my joy. Now I use the word bliss, it's a little bit fancier version, but if you look in the dictionary, bliss just means perfect happiness and great joy. Now understand, you'd be naive to think you could have that 365 days a year. So that's why it's a journey. So I'm, maybe Bono and Shakira have bliss 365 days a year. I don't know. But I'm on a journey to it. So my why is really clear. My purpose is really clear. It's that I want to be inspired to transform in the direction of my bliss. And it just so happens my greatest gift to the world is to inspire others, guys named Andrew and Lake Como, to be inspired to transform in the direction of your bliss. So once you have that, your purpose is clear. You have total clarity. Then comes the exciting part, which is the second part of your question is, what do I do with this newfound knowledge? Yes. That's the fun part. Yes. You get to all of a sudden see the world in an infinite way, and start with these kind of questions like, what would be fun? What would be fun to do that? Or what are the many different ways I could go about that? Yes. And that's called the search for bliss. What would be the most fun and the most joyful for me to do? And ultimately after that comes, hey, pick one. Now, all of these steps, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough and it's rife with pitfalls. So let me give you an example of how not to do it. So great, I got my purpose, I wrote it down. Hopefully I didn't shortchange myself. I really did come up with a sentence that says it all, proper adjectives, nouns, verbs, the whole deal, right? And then I brainstorm, but maybe I choose you to brainstorm with. And we come up with an idea, and the first idea I just run. And I run and I start sprinting, and I'm like, next thing I know, I'm starting a company and doing all these things. What I think happens when you make decisions that way is you're liable to fall into a snake pit. And down in the snake pit, that's pretty nasty, right? You fall down to a 10-foot hole and all of a sudden you're getting bit by 1,000 little snakes. I think what those bites are venom of limiting beliefs and confidence degraders, not boosters. And all of a sudden you're in the snake pit. You don't know how to do online marketing. You don't know how to raise capital. You don't even know what to call your company. You don't know how to do sales. And all you're thinking about are all the things that you have to immediately figure out. Go back to the point of the brainstorming. Really think of all the ways it would be fun to live your purpose and sit with that a while. Maybe bounce it off a fellow champion that's going to really give you good ideas and not bully you, right? And then ultimately what comes next is a really good decision. And this is what I've learned in 25 years of being a coach. People are horrible at making good decisions. And it took me 23 years to learn that that's what was missing in my coaching. I've always been a guy that generally speaking makes pretty good decisions. I don't know why, I don't know how I got that, but I guess experience got me there over time. But ultimately, I now ask people, Andrew, flat out, two things. What's your strategy for not quitting? And they look at me like I'm a Martian, like, who has that strategy? I'm like, well, you better have one. And then number two, what is your decision-making process? What goes into an important decision for you? And honestly, that is not taught in school, and nobody can answer that question for me the first time. But those are the key.
Yeah. Can we touch on that? What is your strategies not quitting? Because let's be really clear. This is detail is the death of people's dreams. It's the details. They get lost, which you just nicely put as a snake pit. Can you elaborate a little bit on what is a strategy? What do you mean by a strategy to not quit? Like my strategy is, my thing is mastery. The days on I want to quit, I want to give up, which happen, they happen. And I just have this ability to go, yeah, but what am I missing out on today? I might learn something today about my craft, and I would have missed it if I don't get up right now. And so then I get up and it's gone. Like, that's my strategy, mastery. What specifically do you mean, just so people could, I know this is
even bigger. Why does a guy like you not give up during a global pandemic? Okay, so it's called sticking. And sticking is the number one strategy for not quitting. And in order to stick, what creates stickiness is knowing your purpose. If you know your purpose and you're aligned with it, you'll basically endure almost anything, right? But if you have if you have some crap company that makes you money and makes you successful and people think you're impressive in the whole deal, but you don't really love it and it's not aligned to your purpose, and COVID happens, and all of a sudden your revenue goes down 80%, I'll show you a person who's running for the hills. You know, they're done. Like, I'm done. I've got all the reasons in the world not to continue. But when you love what you do, you're not going to give up that easily, right? And ultimately, sticking is the most critical thing to achieving dreams. So I believe the number one reason is to know your why on your purpose. Not just your purpose, but your why. So mastery is your purpose. You just stated, why is it, and where are you trying to take yourself with it, right? So I think that's really key to understand. Now, the second part of your question is decision-making. Why do people fall down? Because they just trust their gut. They make most of their decisions based on emotion. They don't have a checklist, and they're doing things like pros and cons because they heard that's a good idea. But cons may be the wrong thing to introduce at the beginning of a brainstorm. I prefer to go with positive brainstorming until I run out of positive reasons to do something before I even introduce a con. And so let's just go back to a good decision. So number one, guys, if you know your purpose, the first check mark box you can say is the bliss journey I'm choosing, or the dream journey, whatever you guys want to call it, the ambition, the business, is it aligned with my purpose? So if you can check mark that box, great. Then make like 9 other ones. Like, would this be really fun for me? Right? Would I still want to do this during a pandemic? You know, make all the lists. I don't care what the reasons are. They need to matter to you, but have several reasons why you decide to do something. Once you make that decision, here's the key. If you wake up and each day you have fresh ideas and more enthusiasm than the day before, chances are you're on the right track. And you might be surprised to hear this, guys. I never make a list of cons. I just don't do it. I positively brainstorm until I funnel into the thing I like the best. And if I can go a couple of days or a week or two with more enthusiasm and more ideas, a light switch eventually goes on, and then I turn to visualization. And as soon as I start visualizing the success of my bliss journey, game on. No stopping me. I'm relentless.
That's what visualization's huge for me. This is where I stopped pursuing goals, because goals for me was just something out in the future that I had to go through around to get there. You're talking about that visualization as being able to almost see, taste, and smell and feel the experience when you get there. And that was a massive driver. That's a huge driver for me.
So here's the difference of why with guys like you and I who are coaches and we're mentoring out in the world, we're not wired to quit. We're not wired to make bad decisions. It's not that we're super special. It's just that somewhere along the way, it kicked in. And then years and years and years of slaying our dreams, we've forgotten how to do those things, which in many ways are habits that don't serve us, right? So I finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, stop being confused and not understanding why people aren't achieving their dreams. Get into the mindset. So, I really have taken time the last couple of years to try to figure that out. So why are you quitting? You can ask that all day long, but what you really need to do is develop their strategy to not quit. So I'll give an example of how that could work better in a billion-dollar industry. We all know that health gyms sell like 90% of their gym memberships right at the break of a new year, right? What do we call that? A New Year's resolution. Mm-hmm. And so they know that by January, something like half of those customers are never going to go to the gym again. So what did they do? They created a system that made it almost impossible to unjoin a gym, right? So you get that monthly membership, go try to cancel it. They make it so hard you almost give up and just say screw it, and you pay the gym membership for years even though you never go. Wouldn't it be better if, right, at your first appearance at the gym, they got the best trainer in the gym, the most fit person in the gym to come in and do a personal, like 30-minute coaching session on all the reasons you might quit. Right? How much of a different philosophy or approach would that be? An inspiring approach to be like, because that's when you're at your point where you're, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. So you would then build up your reasons to stick, you know, and what your purpose was in the first place. So, you know, that's kind of the work that I do, is really trying to attach to someone's purpose so that it's so prevalent. There's no way they would pass on that.
I love what you just said there, and it's something during this pandemic. It's because I can't. There's been a limited ability to be able to go big, meaning retreats, events, and stuff. So all I've come down to is let's refine what I'm doing so I become way more masterful in this space. And what I discover, and what we're discussing right now, is people come in with the right idea. I want to create that. They tell you the dream and you're like, I love it. This is really possible. And then they just find these excuses all the time, whereas some people just don't make them. The most unassuming person that you might not think, you kind of go, I don't know if you've got it in you, but then months down the track, you're still going, wow, you're showing me something here that is stickability. You must have this. Your reasons to not quit must be there. They must be up at the surface. Whereas other people, I feel, have got used to almost being in a pattern of attempt and then give up, attempt and give up. How do you get past? How do you get past that space of where someone always gets to it and then gives up?
Are they truly attempting those? So let's go back to, okay, you found your purpose, you brainstorm bliss, and let's say you chose properly, right? You chose a good bliss journey for yourself. I call it that, your dream pursuit, whatever. So again, what people do is they run ahead and they fall into the snake pit. They don't give themselves a chance to have minor wins, little baby steps to start to go. They convince themselves that they have to figure it all out, like overnight. What's my price going to be? How am I going to get capital? How am I going to do this? All this other stuff. And then they leave their bliss zone and they go into areas that they suck at. And they don't even enjoy. So what did we just do? We completely left a place of, hey, I'm going to pick something that brings me the most joy. And then we sprinted ahead to make it what? Not enjoyable, right? So what I found in life is that if you don't enjoy something and you suck at it, you're absolutely not going to be rewarded in any form of compensation at all. Compensation is based in this world on your level of expertise. So how does someone become an expert? I think hard work and time, right? But actually enjoying the work in a lot of instances. Now, you don't have to enjoy the work to be good at something, but I think what happens is people try to rush ahead and they fall into the snake pit, and then the limiting beliefs come up. So while you're saying they try, I'm saying they're just getting big bites of limiting beliefs, and they didn't give themselves a chance to build any confidence. Because the key also to not quitting is momentum. And so if someone actually goes to that gym with my prior example, and after 3 weeks loses 10 pounds and sees their biceps starting to form, that person is way more likely to keep going than the person that didn't lose a single pound and worked out. And they're just going, God, this is just a waste of my time, right? So unfortunately, people quit way too fast. They give up way too fast, or they try to go too fast. So I'm now at a point where I'm holding people back and saying, no, hey, let's just sit with this a little bit, right? Let's not try to figure out how to monetize something so fast. How about you work at getting better at your craft? So here's a phenomenon. I work with all different types of people, mostly business owners that have been successful, but a lot of times first-time business owners. And when it comes to their craft, Andrew, I'll ask them, and this is right up your alley for coaching speaking, is I say, okay, you want to be a speaker and you haven't made a penny yet as a speaker and you're just starting your career, right? And you're in my coaching class. So rate yourself on a level of 1 to 10. What's your skill level at your craft? Remember what I said, they haven't made a penny yet at their career. You know what the average answer is? An 8. An 8, okay? Look, Beyonce doesn't even get an 8 as a singer, and she made 250 million. She didn't even make 200. She made 250 million last year, but she has many better singers than her in the industry, right? So, for instance, I took a bliss journey up to become a writer, right? I want to be a published writer in articles and Forbes and Fortune, things like that. But I know I'm like a 0.05 at my craft. So I actually have a mentor whose job it is to get me like a 4. And then after that, I hope to get to like a 6. And I think I'll finally be ready to start to submit, right? I'm not lacking any belief or confidence that I'll get there, by the way, but I'm putting in the work. But when you come out of the gate delusional, that's a pretty big pitfall as well. It's like, I'm an 8. That tells me you think you have nothing to learn, right? So now you think you should jump right into that snake pit like you have armor on and all you need to know how to do is monetize. Well, I think you need to know how to do both, and they're distinct from each other. So my recommendation to everybody listening is work on 2 things. Work at your craft. Never stop improving at your craft. You think Andrew here ever stops working on his presentation abilities, right? He just said mastery was his purpose, right? So then number 2 is how you monetize. Just make sure you don't churn your job, your career into something you hate. So I'm seeing people do that a lot right now because of social media and marketing. They're taking perfectly good careers and they're going down the toilet because they think that they have to be an influencer on Instagram and they don't know how and they don't enjoy doing it. That's a bad combination, to not know how to do something and to be bad at it and to not enjoy it. It's not a great starting point, right?
Yeah. Do you know, you touched on such I don't want to call it it's an open wound for me of the delusional part of where you think you are and really where you are. And I've been doing this for 26 years, and trust me, for anyone watching, and Eric, I'm sure I've told you, when I started, I was awful, but in my head, I was a 4 or a 5 already.
Right.
For those, really long story short, my first ever live TV broadcast where I had nagged and basically the producer gave up and gave me a shot on live TV. Live to New Zealand, I made my co-presenter cry and run out of the studio and left me live on air with nothing to say. So I went from thinking I was a 4 or 5 to realizing I was actually like a 0.2 out of 10. And now when I hear people say, this is super common and probably a source of my frustration sometimes, I go, what do you think you need to be? You have this vision of being an amazing presenter. It's always speaking to thousands of people, influencing them in a positive way. And I go, fantastic, I love it. What do you think it is that you need? I just need opportunities. I just need to be on stage. And I go, no, you need to become a really good presenter first.
Yeah, right.
Earn that stage and then get the opportunity and nail it. And then get invited back and next and next. That was my learning, though. You only learn this from a rite of passage, don't you? From falling over and going, oh, I'm not actually as good as I thought I was, which is
well, it's funny because the same confusion that leads someone to jump into the snake pit to try to figure out internet marketing, right? They're the same person that rushes into a conference on ClickFunnels and they get stampeded by 1,000 other people, right? So they're at the end of the line. They don't realize there's 2 billion websites in the world. So the website's not quite the solution either, so there's this kind of herd mentality of trying to do what everybody else is doing. And I like to pull that person back and go, gosh, you sure are rushing to destruction of your dream, because you can spend so much more time working on your craft here. So I think you just gave a great example. And we're a little bit delusional if we think we can just race to the top. And in our industry, Landry, there's so many life coaches that since I've been back, because I left the industry for a decade and came back, I've been shocked. I've been shocked because I'm also an investor. I get the first version of the life coaches, right? I'm so impressive, right? I'm like, oh, good for you. But then a month later, I get the phone call asking for this or that, and the real story comes out. And so be careful who you choose as your coaches, guys. There's a lot of people that they've never built a business other than their coaching, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just, look a little bit deeper. You want to find a person like Andrew who's so accomplished and been doing it for so long, because with that comes work ethic and time and expertise. And I think in this world, what we want to do is we want to pay someone that's a relative expert, right? A relative expert. And that's also the way to get paid, by the way. So if you're a relative expert to somebody else, they're going to be willing to pay you. Tony Robbins is the best in the world at dispensing inspiration. So he gets $5 billion a year because he's the best.
The level of expertise that you're able to play at becomes your leverage. The work that you put in becomes your leverage. And there'll be a point where you start off and you're going, do you know what? I'm actually not very good at this. But then with practice and practice and practice, there's just a day where you turn around, there's just that epiphany and you go, hold on, I'm okay at this. Like, I know what I'm doing now. There's a sense of a bit more confidence and you become great at it. But
Andrew, oh, sorry, go ahead.
We're the forever students. I think that's the key to mastery, is realizing you will never learn it all. And that's what excites me. I'm forever the student, and it just humbles you, because then you realize that there is no limit on what you can achieve and what you can learn. And that's the gift.
Now let's cover the subject of thinking, oh God, I just got to pick one thing. Let's go back to the choice place again, right? Mm-hmm. So I have a business partner, his name's Patrick Combs, and Patrick, his purpose is to be a storyteller. That's the what. Why he does it, he wants to have a creative voice in the world, right? And then the end of that why, what is he trying to do? He's really trying to change the planet. He's trying to impact the planet, right? Everybody that he comes across. So let's just go back in time. So the first thing Patrick decides is, I'm going to go on the bliss journey of trying to be a speaker, right? Like Andrew teaches. And it took him years and years and years of practice. He totally sucked when he started. And over a lifetime, he's spoken to over 1 million people. He's in the Speaker Hall of Fame in America. And he's given thousands of speeches for millions of dollars, right? But he didn't start that way. And still to this day, he gets booked to be a speaker. And you should see how much time he works on it. And he goes, the question I never get asked at the end of a speech is how hard I worked to be good at this speech.
I love it. It's that underlying, no one sees what you put in. Like, it's the stuff that you do at home. It's the stuff that no one sees it, but you know you've done it. And it creates that bone deep sense of trust.
So here goes the thing that should make everybody feel good right now. Well, along the way, Patrick wanted new challenges. Who says he has to be a motivational speaker his entire life, right? So he decides to write a few books. So that's a pretty hard thing to learn. I can tell you right now, I'm going through it myself. I'm writing my second book, and it just takes an awful lot of work, right, to get good at that. But then I want to move down the chain. He decides, after 10 years of fearing it, to do a one-man show, a stand-up one-man show. Not just a stand-up comedian show, a stand-up 90-minute show where he's the only guy on stage doing a Broadway type performance. And so he goes on to do that. It took him 10 years to build up the courage to do it. And it ended up taking him around the planet. But he literally sucked at the beginning. He got booed off stage.
I love
a while. But now he's actually getting picked up to do a major motion picture. They're actually making a movie about his one-man show. Right? But then my favorite one's his last one. So again, notice all those are tied to being a storyteller. But there are three very different ways to make a living right now. Being an author, being a speaker, right? Being a one-man show. They're all stages in one way or another, but his last one's the most classic. So he invents something called origin stories. What is an origin story, you ask? Well, that's when somebody builds a fancy website and the CEO or the founder of the company wants the About Us page to have a couple of cool paragraphs about founding the company. Right. So Patrick teams up with a really great graphic design company who builds $50,000 US websites. And he just gets listed as a menu item, right? Like, hey, if you want your origin story written by the Patrick Combs, go ahead and here. So he links up with that, decides, what should I charge for that? Probably, I don't know how long it's going to take me. It's going to take me probably a day to do that. I'm going to charge $2,500. All right. This happened 18 months ago. He's already done over 100 of those. right? So again, I'm not trying to make it sound simple because he spent 20 years, 30 years becoming a great storyteller. But this is just proof that A, you can make money at anything, but you got to work at your craft. So it was all those years becoming a great storyteller that made it possible for him to charge a CEO of a company $2,500 to write the About Us page. How many? I mean, raise your hand if you've written your own About Us page. I know I have. I don't have somebody write me an amazing About Us page for me, but I do now.
I know with Patrick. I know with Patrick when he did his first one-man show. If I can recall the story right, his friend came backstage and Patrick just knew that on this look on his face, he was like, you know, how was it? And his friend goes, to be honest, it wasn't very good. I don't know if you should keep doing this. And that's where he started. And now he's to this point where you just see
he's toured all over the world. Yeah. It's just, but again, this is a guy that if you were to ask him what's the key to being successful, he'd say work at your craft. Right? Because he's a guy that chooses impossible things because he'll see somebody on stage and go, I want to be like him. I am an entrepreneur that says, I've got a dream and I want to go fast, right? So I tend to pick things that I'm skilled at more than the next person, right? Because that enables me to run fast. I want to say it's Patrick's influence that I've now chosen to be a writer because I said for years, I had all kinds of excuses why I wouldn't do that. But in the end, I got to start at the bottom, you know, and you know what I do? I use Facebook public as my audience. They just don't know it. So the only thing I put out on Facebook public are articles that I'm pretending in my head that I'm writing for Forbes or Entrepreneur Magazine or something. And my mentor comes in, who's been in journalism 35 years, and he actually edits my Facebook posts and back to me. And then he walks me through the edits. So we'll be like editing, listen to this is important. We'll be editing a Facebook post that's a month old for an entire month, way past anybody ever reading it. Who does that? Well, I'll tell you who does that. Someone wants to be great at writing.
Nice. Do you, Eric, I've got a couple of questions here. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions from people?
Yeah, sure.
How do you personally handle negative feedback from, obviously this is a major hinder for some people. We're worried about what other people are going to say, be it their partner, their family, or their friends. How do you deal with it? I know how I deal with it. How do you deal with it?
Number 4 reason people don't achieve their dreams. The first one is they never start. We didn't cover that one, but that's pretty obvious, right? Number 2 is they quit. Number 3 is they make bad decisions. So number 4 is they listen to other people. Right. So I've divided the world into 2. And the 2 categories are champions and the second category are bullies. So don't just immediately go to a place to the kid that beat you up and took your lunch money when you were a kid in grammar school. Bullies can often be people that love you. But what a bully plays when you present a dream or an ambition or a company idea, whatever you want to call it, your bliss, and they bully you, what is actually happening is they don't believe that you can do what it is that you want to do. And they're not just being a jerk, they actually don't want to see your heart get broken by failure. So they're really projecting their own fears and their own fear of failure onto you. So that's what bullies do. My recommendation is to not talk to bullies during the brainstorming session or at the beginning when you start to move along a little bit. Because believe me, the critics will come later anyways. Now, the people that I do turn to when I'm brainstorming my bliss or my dreams or initial idea are champions. Now, champions are people that show up in your life, and you can all think of a few, right? That are just like, no matter what you want to do, they're supportive. Like mom, you know, well, not everybody's mom, yeah. Some people's mom, right? I could say my mom for sure. But you want those people in your inner circle. And if you can't find them, there's certainly a lot of coaches out there that will play that role. But ultimately, you want to be dealing with champions at the beginning of your process. Because here's the thing I get asked all the time. Eric, aren't you afraid of failure? I go, why would I be afraid of failure? I expect failure along the way. I just don't call it that word. I just call it challenges, right? So I don't have that limiting belief. And so you know, ultimately, I think champions are the people that you brainstorm with and you get going, because those bullies are going to remind you of that last failure, right? They're going to remind you of your limitations.
Yep. Do you know what I love about challenges and obstacles is it always brings a solution. So it's where I get excited. And I know when I've dealt with coaches or mentors, quite often something will pop up. They go, you get really excited about not being very good at something. And I go, yeah, because now I know where I suck. And now I know where to focus on being better, because this is going to, in the overall arch of the things, but also challenges to me. Like when I get stuck in my business or on my bliss, I get excited because I'm like, I'm about to discover the solution. Or if I need an answer, my next thing is, what's the question first? What's the question I had to come up with to find the answer that gets me through here? So you start to appreciate the questions and the answers and the problems and the solutions. They're all equal, aren't they?
Yeah, I'll give you a classic example in my life. I took a really big risk in 2009 during the last big recession on the purchase of a live entertainment theater in the middle of the city called Redwood City. It had the second worst moniker of any city in America. The worst moniker is Murder City. The second worst was Deadwood City. And that's where I bought my theater, because that's the place at the time I could afford to buy a theater. It was $6 million, so it wasn't a joke. And I bought it out of foreclosure. It was a 40,000 square foot property, mixed use, with a 20,000 square foot live entertainment theater. That was about 83 years old. And so I took a really big risk. I took a $5 million loan. I put together $1 million in some of my own capital and raised capital, and I bought this thing. And can you imagine, like, no theater experience, not, you know, guys, everything down to the freaking 83-year-old plumbing, I had to become an expert at, right? Everything about that. Did I know anything about making a neon marquee sign actually light up and work again? I knew nothing about that, right? So the minefield of challenges, I loved them. I didn't love all of them equally, of course, but how to put a bar together, how to sell tickets to a show, how to book someone like Andrew to come on my stage and put butts in seats, you know, what happens if a seat breaks? Where do I get new seats? There were so many challenges that I hope you look forward to that, you know, and my purpose is to be inspired. Everything about that 83-year-old theater inspired me. So it was very exciting to learn how to do all those things well. But after several years went by, guys, a funny thing happened. I sold the theater for $19 million. And so I only owned it for 7 years. So do the math on that. And when I sold it for $19 million, you know who came out of the woodworks? I know you're thinking a bunch of people that wanted money from me. No, it was the hotshot real estate people in the area going, oh yeah, I almost bought that theater back when it was for sale. I'm like, really? Because I don't remember there being a line. In fact, there wasn't a line at all. I was the only one at the store, right? And it's just so funny how people will look to take your credit, right? But in the end, I walked away with a $13 million profit in a very short period of time. But that's just funny, guys. You know what else I got to do? I got to meet the sitting president of the United States for 5 minutes. And I'm not talking about the current one. I'm talking about Barack Obama backstage, 5 personal minutes with a president of the United States on my turf, telling him how I was able to get a government loan to buy the thing. We had a great conversation. He liked my wife and I so much. He invited us to the inaugural ball. We had seats at the inauguration, 1 million people standing behind us in the cold, and we had seats. And then he also invited us to the ball. I was hanging out with all these incredible rock stars and actors and everything. So that's just one story, but the amount of compensation, it's not always financial. There were so many forms of compensation over the 7 years, you know, all because I stuck to my purpose of wanting to be inspired. And that went back to childhood. I was inspired by old historic theaters when I was a kid on field trips that we got to go on once a year to San Francisco to go see the opera, which I could give a shit about. But I loved looking at the historic architecture, right? So again, we can go very, very far if we figure out our purpose and align with it and pick bliss journeys that light us up.
What do you think, Eric? I love that. And what you're highlighting there with that theater too is yes, there was the result of $30 million profit, but what you're saying was the journey was actually the part that lit you up. Like there was the reward financially, but that part of every little part of that sounds like, oh my God, this is like my childhood dream. Get an old theater and then just put my love, and then you created something that's like, now I'm going to have
because I could tie it back to my purpose. I can tie it back to how inspired I was as a child, skipping the opera, but staring at the ceiling and the seats the whole time in these historic theaters. And I could tie it to that. So I had stick. I had perseverance into it, stick-to-itiveness, call it what you want. But when things would break and I didn't have the money for it, I didn't quit. I just kept going. But here's the crazy thing. This is where I think the universe shows up for us, right? So, I don't like telling stories about money, and I'm not here to brag about money. But I think that the two biggest limiting beliefs in the world are I'm not enough and I won't be loved, right? So we won't address those now. To me, the third one is I have to choose between my dreams and making money. I hear that all the time. So I choose to buy an 83-year-old theater that nobody else wants, that was forced into foreclosure, right? So I'm buying it from a bank that foreclosed on, and they don't want it either. I pay $6 million by taking out an 80% loan on the thing that I didn't have, and I start to operate it. And all these magical things happen over the years. And I just told the one story about meeting a president, but ultimately I sold it after 7 years, like I said, for 19 million. Well, guess what else happened? Turned out my parking lot in the back became really valuable because development came all over Deadwood City, and little Deadwood City wasn't so dead anymore, became the most vibrant city in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and my parking lots became really valuable. So guess what I did? I put on a developer hat. I've never built a building in my life. I interviewed developers. 90% of them wanted to take advantage of me and thought they could just get one by me. I picked the right one, and we built a 70,000 square foot building. And it cost us $64 million to build. And I sold it in November for $135 million.
That's not bad.
All because I followed my inspiration. Do you think when I followed my inspiration into buying an old decrepit theater that nobody else wanted in a town called Deadwood City, that I thought it was going to make me rich?
Yep.
Right. So my point is, again, become an expert at something. I have retired now from that theater and I've sold it and everything, but I'm an expert. Like I'm definitely one of the best theater operators in the world. It took me time, but I am. And I know I am because there's only 250 of those theaters left. There used to be over 2,000 in America, and they're getting torn down all the time. And I'm the only person in America in the last 5 years to sell one of those theaters for a profit, right?
You know what I'm realizing about you, Eric, is when you choose to do something, there's also a choice that you're making to do it well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not doing it at that level, but I relate to what you're saying, is that I believe that when someone talks about world-class, that's every part of your life. You don't walk out on stage and go, now I'm a world-class presenter. You go, no, I'm world-class, full stop. And then when I go out on stage, I just deliver information. Do you know what I mean? And everything you're doing is your intention, it feels to me, is to be great at what it is that you do.
It matters to me to be great. Yeah, it matters to me to be great. And when I would open the doors to a show, and I did over 1,000 public events and private events over the 7 years of ownership. So that's a lot. That's like 150 a year. I was the guy before doors got set to make sure, is there anything on the floor? You know, are the garbages in the right place? Are there bartenders behind the bar? Is there cash in the register at the concessions? Have they already popped the popcorn? Are all the seats in the aisles properly? Are they numbered correctly? Like, all that stuff matters to me. And in all honesty, if I would go on vacation, guess what wouldn't get done, right? So I've got a list of attributes that would help with this. So I make investments. I have $1 million fund that I use to handpick people that I think are really special. I don't take solicitations, by the way. I have to handpick you, and it usually is through my retreats. And so I have 10 attributes I look for. Number one, do they have desire? Number two, are they action oriented? Number 3, are they a creator? Number 4, are they decisive? Number 5, are they optimistic? Number 6, are they positive? Number 7, do they have strong work ethic? Number 8, do they have heart? Number 9, do they have grit? And number 10, really important, do they have a hero? Show me somebody that doesn't have a hero or a role model that they're looking up to. And, you know, I'd say that's probably not a good fit.
I love all those. You can see how each one is vital. I love that. Desire, action orientated. What was number 3?
Creator.
Creative, of course. I love
Number 4 was decisive. Now there's a difference between optimism and positivity, right? I think Simon Sinek.
That's what I circled. What's the difference?
Yeah, I saw a great, you know, Simon Sinek does a lot of these TED Talks and famous things. I don't watch too many of those, but I saw one the other day on the differences between positive and optimism. I really liked it. You know, what he said about positivity is that the difference with optimism is, with optimism, you can actually go through tough times. You can go through COVID, you can go through a really bad day, right? But still have optimism. Whereas positivity, like to be positive all the time, kind of requires that that's turned on 24/7. And he liked optimism much more because he said it allows for, you know, a working through process. But to be optimistic about the future, even through, say, a pandemic, right, is a good place to be, because the opposite would be pessimistic. But to require someone to be positive all the time. Now, I believe in positivity and I believe in gratitude. I even have what I call a positivity practice, but I think I would change the name of that to optimism, that I have an optimism practice. So I wake up each morning, and before I start my day, I come up with all the reasons to be grateful for the day before. That's it. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes 5 seconds, but it's how I start my day, right? A lot of people start their days with meditation and all that, but that's how I start my day. And what I found is that when you have positive thoughts, it slows down negative thoughts from coming throughout the rest of the day. And positive thoughts can counter negative thoughts very powerfully. So it's a good practice, but that's the difference, I think, between those two.
I've got a couple of comments here asking exactly this. Does Eric have, I get asked this all the time, does Eric have morning rituals? Do you have any rituals that you go through in the evening or the morning? Is there something you always do? Or
yeah, so let's talk about my best days, right? Because I don't want to bore you with the days when I'm too human. Right, so my best days, when my best rituals are in place, I do my positivity practice in the morning. I get up, I do yoga for a half hour. I just do yoga by Adriene. It's just online. She just tells you what to do. You don't even have to think. But that's my form of meditation, right? And then I go for a nice 35, 40-minute walk. Walking really helps me. It gives me some of my best ideas in the morning. And this will surprise you guys. I actually own, I'm not trying to show off, I actually own 23 entities. Now, that doesn't mean I'm operating all 23. Some of them are just investment LLCs, but I operate about 7 of them. So I've got a pretty fair workload. But hear me say this. I come back from that walk, I spend an hour making a really healthy breakfast, and I take my time. I never start working before 10 a.m. Well, let me rephrase that. I almost never start working before 10 a.m. Every once in a while, there's some hotshot that insists on an early morning call. And I'll tell you what, guys, every time I break my ritual and I take that call at 9 a.m. for someone else's needs or their convenience, it ruins my day. And nothing ever good happens. Nothing ever good happens. So I'm very stagnant about 10 a.m. And then I go from 10 a.m. and I work till 5 or 6. So I have a very tight work schedule, but I don't do distractions. I don't play music. I don't do a lot of other stuff. And I like to think that in just 6 hours, I get the work done of what somebody does in a week, right? So I'm very, very efficient. I'm very prioritized, but I shut it down by 5 or 6, and I don't work at nighttime either. So here, I get people telling me all the time, I don't have time for my bliss, right? I don't have time for this. I don't have time to get better at my craft. You know, here I am running 23 companies by myself. Do you know I do my own books? I do it on
I know
Wednesdays.
you were telling me that you were organizing everything in the retreat, which blew my mind. For someone who can afford to hire people to help you, it blew
Yeah.
my mind that you were doing all the emails, you're doing all the bits and pieces. And I was like, man, is this guy's crazy. There's something that you're talking about. One big one here for me too is I never check emails and reply to messages first thing in the morning. Not my thing. Emails afternoon. I never want to get into a reactive mood in the morning. It's me. It's my time. This is where I work on the vision and I'm moving forward. Then the other thing too here is you mentioned the walk and you're giving yourself space to actually have these ideas.
Yes.
Then the important part, do you find, is taking action and moving those ideas forward?
Yeah. So what I do differently, and I grew up on the Franklin Covey system before Franklin or Covey was involved with it. So I learned to prioritize early on, but I sit down and I think about all my companies and I think, what's going to move the ball forward if we're on a pitch, right? If we're trying to move the ball towards a touchdown, what's going to move it forward? That's how my mind operates these days. What's going to give me the biggest leaps? Right. So those are the things that I tackle, because I think what most people do is they sit down and they do the fun stuff, or just the stuff they enjoy. And remember, I'm not saying don't choose the bliss journey that you get enjoyment from, but sometimes with moving a business forward, it's not all shits and giggles, right? So in the end, you have to pick the stuff that moves the ball forward. What's going to drive revenue? What's going to get this result? And so I'm very accomplished at that at this point. So you'd be surprised to hear I don't have a planner. I don't take notes. I don't have any kind of task list. I have no system. I have a blank desk with a whole lot of inspiration around me. I got everything I need at my fingertips, but it's all right here. And again, it's not, I don't recommend that for everybody anybody starting out, but it's decades of learning how to prioritize properly, right? So it's in there to the point where I don't need the notes section anymore. So not for everybody, but I think it's really important to prioritize really, really well your time. People are really good at wasting time.
Yep, 100%. There was two key moments at a Lake Como last year, Eric, for me. One key moment was you telling me you've got all the attributes, you've got the skill. What you need now is to give yourself permission.
Yeah,
that was a big piece for me. I'd never heard that, and I'm well aware that it's only me against me. That's it.
Yeah,
and giving myself permission was an amazing piece of advice, which actually started me. And we tie back this into that we've been sitting on our purpose for decades. Now, this symphony and what I'm working on now, I thought about when I was about 24, so we're talking a couple of decades. The other one was, while everybody sat at happy hour each night, I went into the sauna and jumped into the lake, and as I was walking past, you're like, do you mind if I join you? And we had this swim together in Lake Como. And it was just one of those moments and I remember swimming there in the lake and looking at you and then up at the mountains and just going, this is nuts. This is like one of those moments you just have for the rest of your life. It was that shared moment.
Yeah. And for me, again, what's my purpose? To be inspired. So what was more inspirational, hanging out with you in the lake and looking at some of the most dramatic scenery I've ever seen in my lifetime, or inside at yet another happy hour? So, we make choices in life, but you said something really important. When I work with successful business owners such as yourself, and I see that they're not yet doing something they really want to do, it is just about permission. And what really works well in a retreat setting is a guy like you that is in that position where you actually are the boss. You actually have the resources, you have the talent, so the only thing holding you back is permission. But when you're in a room with someone who has none of those three things that I just said, and you see them trying their hardest to even start, that's when a light bulb often comes on. And that's why I love pairing successful business owners with people just starting out, because it's not permission that they need. They need all the things that you've developed over a lifetime, right? And so a really neat exchange happens. But I think it's important to identify what it is that's causing you to be stuck, no matter where you're at. Is it because you're not willing to put the time in to get better at your craft? Or is it that you have limiting beliefs about what it is you want to do? You know, what is it? What is it that you're stuck on? And that's transformation.
Can I ask you a question? I love this.
Sure.
And for those who I can see are watching, who are in my startup presenters group, and these are people, Eric, obviously, as it says, startup of the business, startup of their speaking career. There can be a tendency to get stuck on something. For example, I don't know who my avatar is, but see, I feel like when then you reply and you go, your avatar is whoever you want to be. Like, who do you want to work with? Like, who do you want to spend time with on Zoom 1 time a week? That becomes your avatar. But then if they come back the week later, so I'm still stuck. What's really happening for them there? Why are they staying stuck in your experience?
Yeah, I'll tell you that confidence is a major thing that we're digging more and more into these days. I'm not a guy that lacks confidence. So I had to get to a point where I understand, God, why do I feel like I'm constantly going back to this limiting belief with this person, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because of a lack of confidence. So we've started to tap into what are confidence boosters? What are little things? Think of that as a craft. Like, what can you do to raise your level of confidence? It's just like a bliss journey. I think that you need little wins, right? And it was funny. I was watching my partner do these confidence exercises that, quite frankly, to me, were just like, they were silly. But one of the ones he did is he got up like this and he did the Superman pose. He goes, sorry, just do a Superman pose. Now look to the left like you're Superman, right? And everybody did it. And immediately he asked people how they felt afterwards, and they're like, pretty damn good. He has this other one where he says, say your first name, but change your middle name to the F word, ING, and then say your last name, but say it with gravitas. Eric effing Lochtefeld, right? So like, they're just these little things that like, I wouldn't need that in a million years, but it's like, whatever it takes to build up your confidence a little bit. Because if you're not confident and you don't believe in yourself, none of it's going to happen. So let me give you an example. Tomorrow, I'm doing a mastery class on becoming a blisspreneur. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now what everybody's expecting. They think I'm going to pull out spreadsheets and teach them how to make money, right? No, I'm going to spend 90 minutes starting off by going, give me all the reasons that you think you can't make money from your bliss, right? I can tell you right now what I'm going to hear are limited beliefs. I'm not going to hear any of the things that make the top 5 list of why businesses actually failed globally. They're going to be very different reasons, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to spend all our time, the rest of the time, giving examples of people who have made gobs of money at the silliest of things, like that are clearly people's bliss. So I got to choose mine. I went last night just to get everybody ready, and I picked the founder of Cirque du Soleil. Because you go back, and at the end of the day, the guy's story is so classic. As a child, he saw Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. Then in high school, he started to do all these performance things. And then he became a homeless street performer. And then he quit his job and he went to work for a dam construction project, and the life came out of him. And then there was not a COVID thing, but I don't know, they stopped construction and they did a strike. So he went back to it limping, and he saw a street performer making a few bucks just by miming. And that's when he got his idea, And so Guy Liberté is now some top 20 richest men in Canada. He's a billionaire, even though the Cirque du Soleil is now having trouble. He sold many years ago. So he became a billionaire off of street performances.
Wow.
So I want ridiculous examples, because is that what we have to do at this point? That limiting belief is so strong, I have to choose. So when you told me that you want to do a symphony behind you when you're doing what you do now, but with a symphony, I look at that and I do visualize nothing but abundance. I'm just like, oh, he thinks he's crushing it now. That's where he'd really crush it. His life would be so abundant if he would do that, right? Okay. So we all have that in us. Mine was to do Bliss Island. And I've been dreaming about it for a really long time. And I'm closing escrow this Friday, actually, on my island that I'm going to run my retreats at, right? So
this is the 12-bedroom mansion you bought in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You know I'm going to see you there, Eric, right?
Oh, I think you're going to run retreats there. Yeah, and even better if it has anything to do with symphonies. So, I'm making inside jokes with Andrew, guys, because I know his big bold BHAG, his big hairy ass dream is to have a symphony behind him when he's on stage, and so that can happen, And I definitely have seen in my lifetime that, like my story of buying the old Fox Theater, that true abundance awaits you. But you'll be compensated in many ways. I never thought I would get 5 minutes with a sitting US president that I respected. That was awesome. I can't put a price on that, but I also got financially rewarded. So stop with the limiting belief that you have to choose your dreams or making money. Because I'll tell you where you're not going to make a lot of money, somewhere you suck and you don't work hard.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to make the least money, right?
Absolutely. There's been so many gems. I know that people keep writing down what they've been learning, and I've written down so much. Eric, you're, out of all the things that you've accomplished, the one thing that gives me that slight tint of jealousy is that you live on your own vineyard. Because that is my absolute ideal. That is part of my dream, like owning my own vineyard and being able to just bottle enough cases to supply myself and my friends. And I love that. There's been
check this out. I got a new, so this is he's talking about my vineyard, guys. This is my wine, Boa Vida. And don't worry, you can't buy it. So, but Boa Vida means good life in Portuguese. But I just got these labels made. Check that out.
Oh, the Bliss. Wow,
they say
nice.
Bliss. Now there is a Bliss winemaker, so I can't legally use that, but I made labels anyways, and I give them as gifts to my favorite people. So I do have Bliss wine now.
Beautiful. Eric, this from all the people here who are watching, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much for your generosity and your time. There's definitely people who've been asking who Patrick's last name is, Patrick Combs. Where can people find you or follow you, or those who have an interest?
So I like to give sneak peeks to people, right? So I've been working, I'm closing escrow on this Bliss Island in the next couple of days, and then I fly out there and I'm going to live there the rest of the year. Kind of a great place to be during a pandemic on an island with no cases of COVID. But ultimately, I'll be renovating it and getting it ready. But I've been building a website, and it's not proofread yet, so I'm like 3 days away from it being perfect. But screw it, who needs to be perfect? I'm going to show up better and better each day. But it's blissisland.com, and nobody in the world actually knows that except for the 3 people that have been working on it with me. And you can see my
island.com.
Yeah, you can see my little project.
This is the new place, the estate, the mansion that Eric has just purchased on in Hawaii. Even you getting there and how you managed to make this happen is very you.
Yeah, so it's going to be a retreat center for people that want to run retreats, but I'm going to take all the hard part out of doing a retreat. So a guy like Andrew, I could just say, Andrew, all you got to do is bring your fans and your content. I'll take care of everything else and try to make it very simple. But my core company is Bliss Champions, and Patrick Combs is my partner in that. It's blisschampions.com. You guys can go check it out. We're not taking applications for next year until mid-September, but you can at least follow along and check it out. And then there's many other companies, but I don't think they have anything really to do with this call today. I've got a lot of real estate and stuff like that. But those are the 2 companies I'm most excited about right now that fit my Bliss. They're the Bliss journeys that I'm actually on, and hopefully you guys will root for me. It's been a lot of fun. That's how I got to know Andrew. Another form of compensation is meeting great people, right?
100%. If there was one, there's so much advice and so much knowledge you can pass on, expertise. But if you were just to go, okay, just to leave you on one thing, what would be one tip to move forward with your Bliss? For those watching here who are sitting on that edge of awareness of, I'm I want to do this, but I'm a little bit fearful or I'm not quite sure if it's the right thing. What's that one tip just to move forward with your bliss?
Yeah, I would say think of yourself as a sailboat, and you got maybe a BHAG there, a big hairy ass dream down the line, or a big hairy ass goal. And don't forget joy, right? Because I think that's at my age of almost 50, I turned 50 in a few months. What I see most in my friends that are successful on paper with businesses and whatnot is they're forgetting joy. And so whatever it is you're dreaming up right now, just make sure joy is part of the destination that you're trying to take yourself to. I think that's really, really important, or else you could wake up one day with a whole lot of success, but not much joy. That's not a place you want to be.
That is why I left TV and film, Eric. I had everything that I could have asked for. And then I was just going, but how am I so miserable? Like I had all the TV,
guys,
all the fame. I was miserable. But
and let's just I can end on this is like, there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness can be derived from an individual pursuit. Hell, I could go play with some puppies right now and be happy. Mm-hmm. Sure, that'll work. I can go watch a good comedy and be happy. But joy is when you give your gift to another. It's when your heart is in another. And so, that's what's great about a dream, about a symphony being behind you, because what are you going to be doing when that happens? You're going to be bringing the joy to your audience, right? And also to yourself. So that's like this great exchange and perfect alignment. Like both parties are winning, and so those are my favorite Blisspreneur, stories, are when you give your greatest gift. It's like the dad that's got the camcorder out and his son scores the goal and he's videotaping it and he's going nuts on the bleachers. What people don't realize is why he's so excited is because all the practice at home. When he taught his son that very move that scored that goal, that's joy. That's joy. So what we do in business often is we chase happiness. So we're looking for the wrong thing. We should be chasing joy. There's just so much more abundance there. So that would be my tip.
Absolutely love that. Eric, thank you so much. I'm going to end this live stream for the other people. Thank you everyone for tuning up here on a Friday morning or evening over there in the US of A. And I've actually got some people here from UK, which is a mighty good effort, to be fair. Thank you very much.